Welcome to this week's episode of Prep Sports Weekly. In today's show, we are going to dive into the local high school football scene.
You'll get some terrific reporting from people live at these games, and we'll also give the updated standings and preview the upcoming games.
Hello everybody, and thanks for tuning in to Prep Sports Weekly. I'm Isabella Christensen alongside my co-host Patton Cook. So let's get this sore subject out of the way here first. We had who we thought were the two top dogs going into this game, and one team really struggled to get out of the gate here, and that is Henry County at Northeast on their homecoming night.
Yeah, this was a game that both of these teams had circled on their calendars because looking at the standings, these are without a doubt the two best teams in the region, and unfortunately enough for Northeast, they got out to a slow start in this game. Before they could get a point on the board, as the game obviously ended 58-0, Henry County jumped out to a 21-0 start, and then after that, whenever you're down to a team like Henry County, you pretty much throw your game plan out of the way. So Northeast, a team that likes to run the ball, likes to enforce their guys up front, and when you're down 21-0 like they were, you have to throw your game plan out and you have to start throwing the football, and that's really where the turnovers started to rack up for Henry County. And for the Patriots in Henry County, they did some things that the head coach from Northeast hadn't really seen. The head coach talked about how some of the pass plays, the flea flickers, stuff like that, that was something that their guys hadn't saw on film, and it really caught them by surprise. And the standouts for Henry County in this game was Jawan Odoms, the wide receiver for Henry County. He is a Memphis commit, and he had 2 touchdowns in this game. And then just to put insult to injury for Henry County, they had Jamarcus Johnson, who went for 168 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. So obviously when you look at the score, you're like, man, this is a team in Henry County that did a lot right. They didn't do a lot wrong in this game, and they did it on both sides of the football. Northeast is a team that likes to score, likes to put up points, and likes to do what Henry County did to them, and that's really blow out the opposition. But for Northeast, they've got to regroup quickly because playoffs are right around the corner.
Absolutely. Northeast, they had a few looks in this game with their offense, but clearly nothing that came out of it, and they just did not show up with that strong defense that they normally do in a game that they really needed to. And
they really just got punched in the mouth, and they got caught by surprise. And this is a team in Henry County that hasn't lost a game in this region since moving to this region 7-5A 4 years ago. So you can, it's no surprise what they're doing this season in terms of the region, but for Northeast, just another kind of step back, because this is a year they really thought they could hang with Henry County, but this is their worst loss to Henry County to date, which was this week. So yeah.
Yeah, so let's kind of switch routes here. We'll go ahead and look at the Clarksville Northwest game. And so Clarksville's another team that they've had their ups and downs this season, but they have the position right now. They've got a big game coming up this week. Northwest is one that hasn't really gotten it together this season. No,
they've really struggled from the start to get anything consistently good on the offensive side. Defensively, they're always out on the football field. They can't get third down stops on third down. And for Clarksville High and Northwest, this is a game that both of them needed to win. For Clarksville, they were already in a playoff position. Right now they sit 4th, but for Northwest, this is a game they had to win. They've kind of dropped games against easier opponents, less to Clarksville High, and this is a game that they've left themselves to have to win. And unfortunately enough for Clarksville High, they won this game. For Northwest, another struggle for their season. This is a region that they've really struggled with since moving 4 years ago, when they kind of got tossed up in the air. But for Clarksville High, more of the same for them. They did what they had to do. Gavin Garinger, the sophomore quarterback, he's really starting to come into his own, and this is a game where he really grew up. He knew that he had to do well in this game, and they did exactly that. So a playoff position furthermore for Clarksville High, but they got another tough one coming up this week.
They do, and we'll see how they perform against Kenwood. Now we'll take a look at how White House took on Montgomery Central, courtesy of Christian Hunt and Miracle Miller.
It was a wet and windy night at Montgomery Central High School as the Montgomery Central Indians faced off in their final home game of the 2020 season against the White House Blue Devils. Both teams came into this game struggling offensively, and White House got it going early with their fullback Evan Schenkel as he got a 25-yard run early in the game to set his team up in the zone, where he would eventually cap it off with a 2-yard touchdown run to get the game going. After this, though, it was a defensive knockout struggle as both teams struggled to get anything going offensively due to the wet conditions and relied mostly on their running game. Montgomery Central struggled in offense again in this game, scoring no points throughout the duration of the game, despite their defense holding White House to only 7 points. We spoke with Coach Thomason after the game about his team's struggles offensively and how they want to improve.
To them, and I don't want to make excuses, but we're just inexperienced on offense. We lost 9 starters from last year's offense, and we're just going through some growing pains. Not having an off season really because of the situation has really affected that too. And we're just going to fight through some growing pains. I told them I'm proud of how hard we play, and come out here and fight every single play to the end, both offense and defense. It's just we're just going through some
growing pains were apparent as Montgomery Central simply weren't unable to get anything going offensively. They struggled to run the ball the entire game. They struggled to get the ball into their playmaker's hands, number 17, their big receiver, Timmy Campbell. They struggled to get anything going offensively. Part of it was due to the weather. The winds did kick up in the second half, but outside of that, Montgomery Central simply could not get anything going offensively. They did have a big drive late in the fourth quarter that was cut by a big interception by number 27, William Michael of White House. And from that point on, it was White House's game to lose. They had a big 6-minute drive to finish off the fourth quarter and simply did not let Montgomery Central get the ball back at all to get anything going offensively. For White House, they now advance to 3-6 on the regular season and will travel back home next week to face off against Greenbrier. And for Montgomery Central, they fall to 2-4 on the regular season, 1-4 in region play. So their playoff hopes are slim to none. But they look to finish off the season strong as they will travel to White House Heritage for the final game of the regular.
Coming up after the break, we'll turn our eyes to the final game, which was Rossview taking on Hendersonville. We'll also discuss all the other games that took place in the Clarksville area. You're watching Prep Sports Weekly on APSU-TV.
Did you know that Kentucky is home to nearly 1,000 species of wildlife?
The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife has a team of scientists dedicated to the monitoring and study of animals that are not hunted, fished, or trapped.
We work every day to improve Kentucky's landscape so that these species can thrive.
And now there's a way for you to jump in and help.
When you become a member of Kentucky Wild, we'll work side by side and do our part to keep Kentucky wild.
We build on success and the success of others. But we are more than sports. We are institutions that play a special role. We are a community that cares, supporting one another beyond the field of competition. Now and always, we are all together. We are all the Ohio Valley Conference.
Welcome back to Prep Sports Weekly. Now we'll take a look at our last highlight package, and that is Rossview at Hendersonville, thanks to Blaine Keller and Matthew Wicks.
A lot was riding on Friday's match between Rossview and Hendersonville. For the visiting Hawks, they could lock up a postseason berth and home field advantage with a win over the Commandos. The hosts had other plans in mind, however, defeating Rossview with a final score of 42-21. The game, which did not kick off until 9 p.m. due to lightning concerns, was a low-scoring affair throughout the first half. Hendersonville struck first blood on a blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown. Rossview's response was a culmination of running back Devontae Phillips, Garrett Diemel, and Aaron Bolster, who capped off an 84-yard drive with 6 points. Brett Rowe, a running back for the Commandos, would rush for one of his 3 touchdowns 2 drives later, giving Hendersonville a 14-7 advantage. The Hawks would nearly find themselves with a 10-point deficit at the half, if not for a blocked field goal attempt in the closing moment. The Commandos would accomplish 2 takeaways on defense and 4 rushing touchdowns after halftime, breaking the game open to the home team. Parker Kirkpatrick and Aaron Bolster would answer with special team scores of their own, but it was too little, too late. The loss puts the Hawks in a precarious situation when heading into the final week of the regular season. Barring a loss for Wilson Central next week against a winless Station Camp team, Rossview must win their October 30th game at Lebanon. If the Hawks come up short, their season is over. Head coach Todd Hood added that his team must...
Well, it wasn't our kids fought hard. Our offense was horrible. Defense played really hard. But the offense, we must be the best punt team in America tonight because that didn't even work well for us. So defense, I'm really proud of the defensive scheme and how they played, but we didn't help them at all.
Either way, it's a win or go home situation for the Hawks. From Hendersonville High School, this has been Blaine Keller with PrepSports Weekly.
Well, now that we had a look at some of these games across the Clarksville area, let's quickly run through the scores of the other matchups that took place this week.
Yeah, so as we discussed, you've got Henry County who went in and just kind of took over Northeast 58-0. Clarksville trying to hold that spot, beat Northwest 32-7. And then you have White House who came in and just barely defeated Montgomery Central 7-0.
Yeah, you really have to look at the weather for that game. Like these couple other packages has mentioned, a lot of these games were postponed due to the lightning and the rain and field conditions. That kind of suited White House right to the tee for Montgomery Central, more the same this season, just a struggle on the offensive end.
You have Columbia Academy and Clarksville Academy who actually did not play. Clarksville Academy has opted out of the rest of their season.
Yeah, really tough to see for Clarksville Academy, a team that really struggled this season in terms of region wins and just overall wins. Started to have some issues with players and a few coaches catching the coronavirus, so they just decided to go ahead and postpone this the rest of the regular season. They weren't looking to make the playoffs. They were quite far off from making it, so just went ahead and canceled these past 2 games. For Columbia, they get a win. Unfortunately enough for them, it won't matter much in terms of their playoff hopes.
And then you have Dyer County who went into play West Creek, and I would say a little bit as expected here. Dyer County has been one that has put up a fight this season and has really stayed up there, and you have West Creek who not so much on the other end.
Right, and unfortunately enough for Dyer County, they've beat the teams they should, but whenever they've gotten to the teams like Northeast and Henry County, teams like that, they've really struggled to come up against because just the size and the offensive power they have. But give credit to Dyer County. They're forcing the issue, making sure if Northeast were to slip up this season, they've been right behind them the whole way. So they've pretty much solidified that 3rd place spot in their region.
You have Rossview who traveled over to Hendersonville this past weekend, and Hendersonville really just went in. This was an important game for Rossview, but they couldn't quite get this one, 42-21.
Yeah, for Rossview, they've kind of had the upset against Mount Juliet, so teams have stopped taking them so lightly as Mount Juliet did that last week. And for Hendersonville, just more of the same. A real powerhouse in this region, starting to take the top dog in this region away from Mount Juliet. They are the team to beat right now, and they've got a fun matchup coming up in a couple weeks.
You have Kenwood, who's got another important game coming up this weekend, and they just barely beat Jackson Northside this past weekend, 31-29.
Yeah, just looking at that scoreline, a really fun game for Kenwood, a team that doesn't have much to play for this season. They've got to win next week to kind of keep the pressure on, but this week a game that they're really starting to find the offense. Defense has been a bit of an issue this season, but if you can get one side of the football right, you only need that other side to start winning football games.
Absolutely. After our final break, we'll review all of the region standings from across the area. And as I said, recognize what is to come in this week's matchup. In the matchups this week, you're watching Prep Sports Weekly on APSU-TV.
You can help support Austin Peay students who don't have enough to eat by donating to the Save Our Students Food Pantry. The Save Our Students Food Pantry is looking for soup, pasta, canned meat, canned beans, peanut butter, and fruit. You can drop off your donations at the food pantry on Home Avenue. It's open Tuesdays through Friday, 8:30 until 4. For more information, call 221-1620. 221-1620. A campus reminder from Austin Peay.
Score going to the playoffs. I can't believe I missed that. Every time I'm buzzed, I spend too much time on my phone. What? I should take your phone away. No. I'll call for a ride. Wait, why does my face look like that?
I'm playing with these new face filters.
Okay, you know what? Yep, that's mine.
But I need that back.
No.
Kevin!
College can be hard, and sometimes life can be even harder. That's why Austin Peay offers counseling services for students in need of help. Whether it's mental health, relationship advice, or even having someone just to vent to, counseling services are available. All you have to do is call 221-6162 or stop by their office in the Art Building and begin finding your way back to wellness. For more information about student counseling services, check out our Facebook page at WAPXFM 91.9.
Roll over. Chance high five. All right. When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. And your mother and... I am totally a hot person. Right, guys? Thanks for being honest. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome back to Prep Sports Weekly. Let's go ahead and look at some of the region standings across the area, and we'll start with 5A Region 7.
So as we've discussed a lot, which they've been the talk of the season, Henry County and Northeast just up there together.
Yep, a game that was all to play for last week. Unfortunately for Northeast, that loss pretty much solidifies them right at second place in the region. Dyer County locked themselves up at third place. Now, the real matchup that we'll want to keep our eye on is that Clarksville High and Kenwood. They're at 4-5 right now, and Clarksville High, they've got a game this upcoming week alongside Kenwood that is a region game. So as long as Clarksville High can win this week, they will lock themselves up another playoff position for the fourth year in a row. And give credit to Isaac Shelby and those guys. They've taken care of business, but for Kenwood, they're looking to play the underdog role, if you will, and kind of sneak up on Clarksville High.
You have Northwest and West Creek down there at the bottom. They haven't fluctuated too much this season. It's just been a bit of a struggle for them.
And unfortunately for them, that's kind of where they stand. As soon as this region was created, it's been Henry County and Northeast at the top, and for the majority, Northwest and West Creek near the bottom. So they're just looking for a little bit of a culture change. If you can win a game late in the season, who knows? You can take that into next season's play and start with some confidence instead of starting from square zero like most of the teams have.
We'll take a look at Region 4, 6A. You have Hendersonville High School on top there. They've really had it together this season when they've needed to.
Yeah, fantastic start for them, for Hendersonville. Their really only losses this year have come to Oakland and Beach. And for Oakland, they're pretty much locked up to be in the state championship every year. They're pretty much a D1 factory when it comes to the football season. But for Hendersonville, they've done what they had to. They've got a really exciting matchup against Matt Juliet this week. So if Matt Juliet can win that game, they will be at top of the standings in this game. But you'd have to like Hendersonville, just the way they've looked this season. Haven't had many close games to play for.
Now, if it weren't for that upset from Rossview, Mount Juliet may be in a different position here, so that has definitely reflected a little bit on their season. You have Wilson Central High School and Rossview High School, who's got a big game this week, as we mentioned earlier, against Lebanon. I mean, that's going to show a lot.
Yeah, a game we'll talk about here in just a little bit, but two teams that will be fighting it out for the for that fourth and final spot. But a team I'd like to talk about is Station Camp, and they will have won one game in the past 3 seasons as they sit 0-9 overall. And when you look at that kind of Hendersonville area, it's a team that's got a lot of talent, and it's pretty much going to either Hendersonville, Beach High School, JP2 is also in there, a private school, so they're really struggling to find guys that can win them ball games. And right now, sitting 0-9, that's the last place they want to be right now.
Absolutely, and now we'll take a look at Region 5, 4A. You've got Creekwood and Springfield up there, 2 teams that have to be cautious just as we get close to playoffs on what they do this week.
Absolutely, and those 2 teams will be playing each other in the final week of their season, Creekwood and Springfield. For Springfield, their one loss came to Dyer County, a team in a region a little bit further away, so a bit of a shock for Springfield. They lost last week, or 2 weeks ago, to Dyer County. They've got a chance to win the division against Creekwood, but Creekwood right now, they're perfect, 9-0 in their overall standings, not many close games. So that's something I'd like to look at if you're a Springfield fan. If you can kind of keep Creekwood close, they haven't had many of these close games, so maybe they're not as good at closing out close games as Springfield has been, where they've been in some closer matchups.
You have White House Heritage and Greenbrier just right above the line there. It's another 2 teams that have really been pushing this season and fighting to stay up there.
Yep, and they're pretty much solidified their way. Now, Greenbrier does have a game against White House that will kind of decide their season as well. So that's one thing we always look forward to in these later stages of the season, the last week of football to be played. That means important football games are here still to be played in Greenbrier, and White House will do that. They both sit at 2-3 in their region. Portland High School, more struggles, 0-6 so far this season. We've kind of talked about Montgomery Central. They lost a lot of guys to graduation last season, so they're just looking to kind of build a new identity. They've tried new stuff at the offensive side of the football pretty much every week. They're just looking to find something that they can kind of move forward to for next season. So look out for Montgomery Central in their final game that we'll talk about in the next segment.
And we'll move on to the West Region, Class A. You've got Davidson Academy up there, just the powerhouse of this region this season especially.
Absolutely. Davidson Academy 9-0 overall, 7-0 in their region, and a team that they'll be kind of having their eyes on is my former high school, Donaldson Christian Academy. They are as well 9-0 overall and 7-0 in their region, and those twos have kind of always had that close rivalry. There's only about 20 minutes distance between the 2 teams, and it's always a physical game between Davidson Academy and DCA. So you Clarksville Academy fans, even though your season is still no more, go watch that game. Those are 2 great teams that will be going head to head to possibly fight for a state championship in a couple weeks' time, I think.
You have Nashville Christian, Trinity Christian, Columbia Academy, and Tipton Rosemark. And Columbia Academy and Tipton Rosemark are going to benefit a little bit from Clarksville Academy opting out of their season.
Absolutely. Those 2 teams had games against Clarksville Academy scheduled. Now, luckily enough, Columbia Academy, they are in that line of making the playoffs. 6 teams end up making the playoffs from this region, so they've got a chance to make it in, and that's really the goal of the season for Columbia and Tipton Rosemark. Make it in, see what you can do once you make it in. So that'll be exciting matchup. Who can finally break into the playoffs, and if you can make some noise, great. If not, kind of build for next season.
You have Fayetteville Academy just kind of staying on the bottom there. Not much change really at all this season, but for our final portion here today, let's review what to keep an eye out for this Friday. So that is, you have Antioch High School at Northeast High School this week.
Yep, a game that doesn't really matter in terms of playoff position for either of these teams. Antioch, they sit 1-4 in their region. They kind of had a slow start to the season because they're in Metro. They didn't start playing games until September 25th. But for Northeast, even though this won't directly influence their playoff position, I think it's vital that they get some confidence back, because losing a game like they did 58-0, confidence for these guys is going to be low. You just got to figure out how to move past it. Adversity is going to hit. You'd rather it hit now in terms of the regular season than in a close playoff position, where Northeast wants to be, is in a challenge for that state playoff, which they haven't been too many times.
Then we've got Northwest High School traveling to Henry County, and Henry County's been comfortable anywhere this season. I think having this home game this week is going to benefit them in any other way.
Right, and if you're Northwest, you're looking at what Henry County did to Northeast last week, and you're thinking, well, Northeast blew us out 40-7. You'd hate to wonder what could happen here, but for Northwest, just kind of slow the ball down, run the football, try to limit the play of Henry County in that offense as much as they can, because they're pretty much guaranteed points anytime they come out on the field. They're a real juggernaut, both through the air. They've got a sophomore quarterback, does Henry County, so they've got a lot of years left to go with this young man, and they've got some talent on the outside. So for Northwest, just kind of slow the football game down and make Henry County beat you on slow, methodical drives to give yourself a shot, because it's a game you're not expected to win, but just try and force something out of this one.
And the next one we have Dyer County at Kenwood, and I think that this could be an interesting game. I mean, it would be interesting to see if Kenwood wants to put up that fight this week.
Well, Kenwood, they've got all to play for. Dyer County, they're locked up. It'd be interesting to see if they do end up resting some of these guys for Dyer County. Going in fresh to the postseason could be huge for Kenwood. They got hopes for some help between a team we'll talk about here in a minute, Clarksville High. So they got it all to play for. This is a hungry football team who believes in their head coach, and they've kind of stuck around for the majority of the year, so we'll see what Kenwood can do. But I like their chances in this one, just because Dyer County, not a lot to play for Kenwood. They've got it all to play for to play some meaningful November football.
Then up next, we've got Montgomery Central, I believe, at White House Heritage.
Yep, and Montgomery Central, they've got a big game once again here. Not a lot to play for once again, but I've said it for a few of these teams. You want to build some momentum going into the postseason. They've got off-season workouts coming up here in the spring. If you can win a big game against White House Heritage, kind of spoil their fun in the final weeks of this game, you can kind of build upon some of this stuff. But our game of the week, Isabel, that we will want to talk about is a school that you went to, Rossview High and Lebanon High School, and that's a game that both of these teams need to win. If Lebanon can win this one, they can leapfrog Rossview to end up making it into the postseason. And they've got a really good running back. DeQuante Shannon is the senior running back for Lebanon. 3,000 rushing yards to his career. So if you're Rossview, limit the run game, and once you do that, Lebanon really struggles through the air, not a great passing team. So I like Rossview in this game. They show what they can do against a team like Mount Juliet pulling off the upset. Lebanon, it'll be tough for them, but I've got a good friend on that coaching staff. Good luck to both of those teams fighting for the playoffs.
Absolutely. I think it would be so interesting just to see Rossview pull out on this one. So the Clarksville Academy game no longer. Now you do have Clarksville High School at West Creek going into this week, and Clarksville, just like Kenwood, those two are going to be battling this week.
Yeah, this one could easily be game of the week as well for Clarksville High. Like I mentioned, they're wanting to continue their streak of making it into the playoffs for the past 4 years. Isaac Shelby has done a great job with that program, kind of nailing down playoff positions, but really the key here now is to really find a way to go further in the playoffs. They've kind of coming up against these tough teams. See what you can do. See if you can't make a little bit of a run at it for Clarksville High. So that's a game we'll want to keep our eye out. West Creek, not a lot to play for.
Well, we're glad that they got to play this season. There's a lot to keep an eye out for. From Pat and I, we want to thank you for tuning in to Prep Sports Weekly. Join us next time for all things high school football. We'll see you next week.